Let's talk about something that has confused people for thousands of years. Can humans really understand the nature of God, or is it a mystery we can't solve? Here's the problem: people have been thinking about God for a long time, but the idea of an all-powerful, all-knowing being is still hard to understand. Is it because we can only understand so much, or is there more to this mystery? Do our mental habits shape how we think about God, or is there a basic understanding we are missing that science and philosophy haven't found yet?
That's a deep question, Michelle. In history, many cultures like the Sumerians and the Greeks have tried to think about and understand God in different ways. Their stories and myths try to make God more like human life. But experts say these stories show more about human minds and society than about God. A thinker named Ludwig Feuerbach said our ideas about gods are just how we show what humans want. Does this mean our understanding is more about us than finding the truth about God?
Yes, Guy. Researchers in brain science say our brains like to find patterns and give things a purpose. This could be why gods often seem like people in many cultures. But this doesn't mean humans can fully understand the divine. Our brains might only let us see our own world. A study from Harvard shows that deep spiritual experiences can change how the brain works. But do these experiences help us understand God, or do they just make our beliefs stronger? What if these experiences change us on the inside instead of showing us outside truths?
That's a good point, Ryan. And we should remember that even in one religion, ideas about God can be very different. In Christianity, for example, the Catholic view on God is different from the Protestant view, and also different from the Eastern Orthodox view. This might mean God's nature is too big for anyone to fully understand and seen through culture and personal views. Are these views just parts of a big puzzle, or do they all fit together to help us understand better?
So if each idea is just a part, does strict belief limit our understanding of God, or does it help us with something we can't fully grasp? How much do our beliefs depend on what humans can understand, and what is outside of that? Could mixing different fields, like brain science with religion or AI with spirituality, help us find new ways to think about God? What if we focused more on the experience of the divine itself? Let's explore a bold idea. Spinoza said God and nature are the same, but many people see God as different from nature. What if seeing God this way limits how we understand the divine? Maybe if we see God as part of nature, we could learn more.
You've touched on something deep, Michelle. The ancient Egyptians saw their gods as natural forces. Spinoza and Einstein thought God was part of the universe's order too. Is our modern world stopping us from seeing it the same way? Maybe our progress just repeats old ideas we don't fully understand yet. What do these patterns show about our search to understand more?
Good point, Guy. Our brains naturally sort things to understand them. Separating God from nature might be because of this, but studies show our brains can change. Spiritual practices can change how our brains work. Maybe we're close to a big change in how we think about spiritual things. Are we unknowingly about to change how we understand spirituality?
This fits interestingly with Buddhism. In meditation, people try to feel one with the whole world. Ancient wisdom mixing with science might show all religions lead to understanding the same truth. But do these ideas mean we can see God as a whole, or will we always see only parts of the truth?
Interesting, Sonia. Maybe each tradition shows only a part of the big picture. If science and spirituality can change how we see things, should we try to get more evidence of these experiences to understand better? What if the goal is not to define God, but to keep asking and learning what divine means from different views? Here's a puzzling idea for you. Many people think infinity is like the divine. Just as infinity goes beyond exact calculation, does God go beyond full human understanding? Could trying to understand God be limited in the same way?
That's an interesting thought, Michelle. Looking back in time, ancient Babylonians understood their gods through nature, not abstract ideas. Does this mean our minds can only understand what we can see?
Absolutely, Guy. Brain science shows our frontal cortex has limits. Studies show meditation can improve brain function, suggesting spiritual practices might help us understand divine ideas. But do these abilities really help us understand God, or just make things more complex?
That's an interesting view, Ryan. In Hinduism, the divine is seen as complex and endless, maybe showing our mind's limits. This suggests we may not fully understand God, but can see parts of it. Does this make Hinduism a better way to explore understanding God?
Interesting, Sonia. Does the variety in spiritual practices mean the divine can't be defined? Is there a hidden truth in these different views, or are they just ways we understand? And if we improve our thinking tools, maybe with technology, how might that change how we see spirituality? Here's a complex idea. Think about the Hindu idea of Brahman. It means a reality beyond all beliefs and definitions. If Brahman is beyond understanding, how does that change how we see God? Does trying to define God limit what we know instead of helping us learn more?
Interesting, Michelle. In history, cultures made gods in a form they understood. Like Greek gods with human traits and flaws, they shaped gods like themselves. Does this mean we only understand what fits our experiences? Do we naturally make gods human-like?
Good point, Guy. Studies show our brain makes us see gods like people. We relate to human-like figures, so God often looks familiar to us. Does this bias keep us from understanding all of the divine? Should we try new ways to think beyond our usual ideas? How do we balance this with the idea that the divine is more than human form?
Yes, Ryan, but mystical experiences go beyond these biases. In spiritual traditions, enlightenment speaks of unity beyond words. Are these experiences signs that we can understand more about God? Or are they just personal views without universal truth? Do mystical experiences connect our human view with divine reality?
That's interesting, Sonia. What if these mystical experiences show a truth we are starting to see? Could combining them with science help us understand the divine better? If we open our minds, can we find deeper truths about God? Or are we just exploring our own ideas? Can future AI and brain science help us understand these experiences better? Think about the idea of God like a language. It gets richer with new words from different cultures and times. Here's a surprising question. Is our trouble to define God like trying to fit an ever-changing language into one dictionary?
That's a great way to see it, Michelle. In history, cultures have added to this language of God. Look at ancient societies with many gods, like the Norse gods. They were natural forces with human traits. These gods showed parts of life, helping people understand the world. Could these ideas show our need to turn the divine into something we can relate to? And maybe this helps us understand ourselves more than the divine.
Great point, Guy. Modern science agrees. A study showed that when people pray or meditate, certain brain areas for language and feelings are active. This means we might use our mind and feelings to make a language for God. But does this mean our understanding is only human and limited? Or maybe our brain can go beyond these limits over time?
But Ryan, many spiritual paths say we should go beyond words and thinking. Like in Vedanta, Brahman is beyond human traits. Mystical experiences in religions support this too. Can these experiences help us see beyond our language and thinking limits? Or are they just another way to say what we can't explain with words?
Here's a tough thought. If every word we use for God limits us, should we keep growing this language? What if changing how we see this helps us make the language about exploring? Could exploring show patterns or ideas that help us understand the divine better, even if not fully?
That might be important, Michelle. In history, as communities grew, their ideas of gods changed. One-god religions came with societal growth, showing new ideas of divine power. Could this history show a natural growth in our divine language as communities change? Could this be an ongoing talk with the divine, not just a search for a final answer?
Interesting idea, Guy. Research by Robert Bella shows how communities change from simple tribal gods to complex one-god ideas as societies grow. This supports the idea that our language for God changes with social needs. But does this change mean we understand more or just add more details to the mystery? Does adding more actually help us understand more without knowing it?
The Japanese idea of kami in Shinto might help, Ryan. Kami are parts of nature, spirits, or ancestors, and are complex. Some cultures seem to welcome this complexity instead of solving it. Could using these ideas help us see the value in not fully knowing? And does valuing mystery open new ways to understand the divine in our lives?
So here's an interesting question. If our idea of God is like a growing language, are we stuck in endless meanings, or can we find a clear universal idea? How might trying to understand change not just what we believe, but how we live, interact, and create? Could exploring be the divine act, linking us to something greater as we try to express and understand the infinite?